Thank you very much, Nicholas. Before we started, Nicholas, I'm always introducing Nicholas at Velocity because he's one of the top speakers that I always hope to get, and so it was nice. He mentioned it'll be nice to turn the tables and be the one introducing you, and I agree, that was nice. Thank you, Nicholas. And in fact, this year we learned, I'm not a conference organizer by training or education or anything, and so every year I think Velocity gets a little bit better because we do some things wrong and try to remember those and not do them next year. And one of the things that we did wrong last year was we ended on a whimper. Like, we had a topic that wasn't that timely and was kind of like, yeah, okay, we have one more slot, yeah, okay, let's put that in there. No one looked up last year's schedule and figure out who I'm talking badly about. I don't remember who it is, but I don't want you to. Steve's dissing, roaring Rick up on stage at Box. And we ended on a whimper. And so this year when we were laying out the schedule, I don't know if I told you this, Nicholas, I said, let's remember to end on a strong speaker. And so Nicholas is actually the closing speaker this year at Velocity. Yeah. So that was very intentional. Now the hard thing is you're going up against Adam Jacob on the ops track, and he's a very good speaker too. But us performance wonks will be in your room, in your corner. And okay, so we've got about, and great thanks to Shiv, who's walking back with his dinner, for organizing this and pulling me in, and Nicholas as well, and for Box hosting us here and providing food. Could we give a round of applause? That was really lame. Could we give a louder round of applause? I just think I tweeted, was it yesterday, about how awesome it is to work in a community of people that are so intelligent, innovative, eloquent, and giving. And I just think it's amazing that companies do things like this. I like talking to you guys. We'll have Q&A at the end, and I'll stay after to talk to people. I really enjoy doing that, and I just think it's amazing that companies put their space, make their space available and host us. So I don't want to minimize that. I think that's really groovy. Okay, so let's get going. I'll mention that if you go to my website, you guys have probably all seen this because I'm guessing 95% of you have been to my website today. How many people visited my website today? Wow, I was only off by 94%. Over here on the side I have talks, and you can click on the slides link there and you can see the slides so you don't have to take notes. And if you click on more, you can see all the talks, and almost for every talk I have slides going back to the beginning of time. So you can pull stuff there. So you don't have to take stuff like that down, but it's kind of irrelevant for this session because this is a hands-on kind of demo-driven session. And so normally I have an hour and I have 96 slides. I think I have 4 slides tonight, and that's it. Because most of it, and the reason I've got the stand is most of it is going to be hands-on stuff. And so if you have a laptop, pull it out, we can do stuff together. I'm going to ask everyone later on to do stuff on their phone with me, and we'll all do stuff together there. Ryan, I'm thinking of you. Where are you? And because what I find is folks like me or Nicholas, Pat Meenan, we build these tools, and we talk to a lot of people who use the tools. But then I don't want to ask it tonight. I'll go to an event like this and I'll say, how many people run PageSpeed regularly? How many people have ever heard of the HTTP archive? How many people have ever heard of BrowserScope? And we're always kind of surprised because it's a performance-oriented event, like a performance meetup or Velocity, and usually like 20–25% of the people in the room will raise their hand. And so what I want to do is I actually did like a first half of this talk up at Airbnb about a month ago, focusing on desktop tools. And what I wanted to do tonight was do the mobile counterpart of that talk. So without any further ado, let's dive in. And I want it to be, again, very informal, hands-on. So if like something I say is wrong or you don't understand or you have a better way of doing it, just shout it out, and that's fine. We can deal with that. Oh, yeah, so I kind of just did this. So I want us to roll in the mud of web performance. I want us to all reek of web performance by the time we leave this room tonight. I want us to be familiar with what it feels like, right? This is a nod to the Tommy song by The Who. And we'll talk about some history about how these things came about. Nicholas already did that. And we actually won't have any good anecdotes because it's being videotaped. And there's going to be lots and lots of demos, and hopefully there will be lots of questions. I can control the first three, but you guys control the last one. So do your job. Okay, so first I wanted to talk about metrics. So, we want to, what's performance feel like? So, like before you optimize something, you should measure it, because otherwise you don't know, you're flying blind, you don't know if you're making it better, how much you're making it better, which things that you do have the biggest impact on performance. And, this seems like a pretty simple thing, like, excuse me, I want to make my website faster. Well, that's pretty simple, right? And so let's talk about that a little bit, and we'll see it's actually really hugely complex, involving PhD dissertations. So there's two kind of main core metrics, and the one that I love the most is called RUM, Real User Measurements, or Real User Metrics, or Real User Monitoring. All of those are acceptable. RUM is a way to avoid that confusion. And probably the most popular one of these is Google Analytics. I won't show it tonight. Oh, yes, I will. I can do that. So now I've got to do something. Oh, that's actually okay. Will it stay in if I do this? Okay. Let's try that. Is that good? Can you hear me? Oh, there we go. Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, that's working. Okay. So we can do that, yeah, because usually I use PowerPoint, but I'm not tonight. So this is the HTTP archive, and what this is, I've been running this project for about 2.5 years, and twice a month I crawl a number of the top URLs worldwide based on Alexa. And so you can see when it started, actually this is just the last year, let's see. So I can go up here and I can go back to the beginning of time and do that, and this shows how many URLs are analyzed. And the thing I'm most proud of for this project is to show off my UI design skills. I don't understand. Why are you laughing? So if you can read these overlapping numbers here, which no one really can, we can do something like this. We can, okay, here, like we'll do this, and then we can see the numbers and actually read them. So when it started in November of 2011, I was crawling about the top 15,000 URLs worldwide, and now we'll just do this and we'll get back. Now we're up to 300,000. I'm probably going to stop when I get to about 1 million, but we're gradually buying more hardware and improving the database and things like that to get this larger and larger. And you can see all these trending stats or other stats about aggregate stats for these top URLs worldwide. And then you can also drill down to, in addition to looking at all 300,000, you can look at like just the top 100 or top 1,000 worldwide. And we can also look at individual websites. Isn't that a fast search? I'm sorry, I'm a lamp stack kind of guy, so. Okay, there we go. Oh, well, okay. That's why it was a little slow. Okay, so there's box.com. And so I actually haven't looked at this before tonight. Most recently, we did a run in the middle of the month. So this is the results from that run on April 15th. You could go back and get results from any of the other previous runs. This is what's called a film strip view. We'll look at this again. It's the HTTP archive uses web page test underneath. If you haven't, we'll look at web page test in a minute. So you can see these screenshots and you can get these stats. Wow, a lot of images. Holy cow. According to this, Box.com is 2.8 meg. Oh, thank you. And it's only 47 requests. Wow, there must be some really big images in here. Yeah, look at this. Average PNG, I don't know what that says, like 67K or something like that. It's really big. This is an interesting, not everything is performance related, but this one is what's the average cache lifetime? That means we downloaded this request, this response on April 15th. How much longer from that time is this, can we read this out of cache before we have to refresh it? And so you can see that almost half of the resources are cacheable for less than a day. So that's not really super. Aren't I really nice to invite over to Box and then point out all the warts of their website? So you can do this for other websites, and you can get trending charts and waterfall charts and stuff like that. So HTTP archive is one thing that I hope people get familiar with. And one of the things that I track in there is how many of these top 300,000 websites use Google Analytics, and it's like 60%. So Google Analytics is used on a lot of the web, and we started tracking page load time about a year and a half or 2 years ago, and about a year ago, but you had to opt into it. About a year ago, we just turned it on for everyone at a pretty small sample rate. So even if you've never turned it on, if you have Google Analytics, you can go to your dashboard and actually see page load time, DNS lookup time, things like that for your website. So check that out. But there are other vendors. There's a company, LogNormal, Philip Tellis, Nicholas and I and other Yahoos worked with over at Yahoo, is now started a company with Buddy Brewer called LogNormal, and they just got acquired by SOSTA a few months ago, and they're RUM. So RUM is basically, I'm going to put some JavaScript in the page, and it's going to measure how long it takes until the window onload event fires. And that's going to be the page load time. Kind of the industry name for that is page load time. So you can do that with Google Analytics. You can do it with mPulse. Torbit has a product for doing that called Insight. New Relic has their RUM product. Now, one thing is that Google Analytics is only works in browsers that support the navigation timing API. So this is a new API that came out of the W3C Web Performance Working Group that Google and Microsoft started about 2 years ago. And of course, the nav timing API doesn't exist in browsers that have been were released before the spec came out. And it's not in many mobile devices either. And so Google Analytics only works in browsers that support nav timing. So it means you're not going to get any data for iPhone, IE6, IE7. So that's kind of a drawback. The nice thing about Google Analytics is if you have other stuff in there about conversions and stuff, you can kind of mash it all together and see how performance affects conversions. But all of these other solutions have a way to work around that problem. And the last two, in fact, are based on this open source code I wrote called Episodes a couple years ago. And the workaround is pretty simple, is when let's say you land on the front page of Box.com and you're in IE6 or you're on iOS and the nav timing API doesn't exist. Then these last 3 or 4 bullets have a fallback plan. And that fallback plan is I'm on Box.com and I click a link to some other Box.com site, and we know that the nav timing API does not exist. So in the unload handler of that page, we set a cookie with the current epic time of the client. And then when you get to the next page and the onload event fires, we look for that cookie, and we can find the full page load time from the time the link was clicked to the time that the next page's onload fired. And so that's really handy to do, because up until that technique was publicized, people would put a timestamp at the top of their page and measure from the top of the page to the onload event, but that missed the time for the request to go up, possible redirects, and the time for the server to stitch together the actual HTML document response and for that to come back down. So that's usually 10 or 20%, sometimes more, of the total page load time. And so this is kind of a neat technique that these other solutions use. And so, RUM is one way of measuring performance. And the thing that's cool about it is it's for your real users. So you don't have to try to guess which browsers they're using, what the breakout of browsers is, what the average connection speed is, or are there clusters of connection speeds that you need to model, the geographic areas where these people are coming from, and can you get a point of presence there. It's in the user's hardware, on their network, on the pages that they're going to. And so you're getting really, really accurate ground truth information. So that's very cool. I like RUM data. Another type of data that you can get, timing data, falls into this camp called synthetic. And these are companies like Keynote, CompuWare, and this open source project called Web Page Test, which I want to talk about the most. And basically synthetic means that there's not a human there generating the activity to load the page. So it's scripted in some way. So let's look at how Web Page Test works. How many people? No, I'm not going to ask. It'll make me cry. So we can go here and we can say like http://www.box.com, and this is all open source, and Pat Meenan has done a great job of getting the world behind this tool. And so there are companies in all of these cities who have voluntarily spun up an instance of this open source code and made it available through this tool. So you can test this page from all of these locations, including behind the firewall in China. I'm just going to take the default, and I'm going to use, we can say like IE9 and Dynatrace. Oh yeah, that's right, okay. And then I can set other things. The ones I always set is save response bodies, because if something funky happens, I want to go back later and be actually able to see the JavaScript or the HTML. And I always click on capture video. And normally I do 9 page loads, but for the sake of time, I'll just do 1. And then we click start. And depending on how many people, Pat's done a great job. He's running this all, I think, up on Amazon. And he's got, I don't know how many different versions of IE9 up there running. But it's possible. Oh no, we're not behind anyone else, so it's actually running. It probably, I don't know what's happening, because clearly box.net probably loads in like a second and a half. Although according to this, it's 11.7 seconds. Again, don't ever invite me to come do a talk at your company. And so, so it's really cool, and it includes IE9, Chrome, Firefox. I don't know about Opera and Safari, but also iPhone and Android. So let's talk about that a second, because tonight's focus is supposed to be mobile. And so what I did this afternoon was I guessed at some of Box's competitors, and what we really know is there's no one in the world who can compete with Box. Okay, so we know that's a given. All right, so with that, what are some alleged competitors? So the ones I picked were Box, Google Drive, Dropbox, and SugarSync. I've never heard of them. And this looks like there's like Google Drive fail, right? Doesn't it? Oh, so what this is called, we're back in Web Page Test. And in Web Page Test, you can do get all these different results, and then you can compare them. You can compare up to 9 or something like that, 8, and you can compare. In this case, we're comparing the film strip view, right? So it's a snapshot taken, a screenshot taken at most one every 1/10 of a second, but it's usually much less than that. And this is a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So this really gives us some insight into what the user experience is. Now, when I first clicked on this and loaded up the result, I thought, oh shoot, I'll have to do it again because Google Drive failed. But it turns out that for whatever reason, the application kind of picks a time window that's in the middle. So we're at 6.5 seconds here. And actually Google Drive is already done. So that's why the rest of it is all black. And it's done, and all of the other ones are still waiting for anything to load on the screen. And finally, we get Dropbox is the first one to appear, substantially, and we can keep going, and we can see then Dropbox finishes, and we have, I think SugarSync beat out Box a little bit. So this is a really, really great way, especially for people who maybe are more focused on the user experience, the visual experience, to get them kind of interested in performance. If they're not heavily invested in performance, and it turns out you need to be, and you're kind of one of the slower ones, this is a great way for them to actually see what's going on and compare it to websites that they want to be faster than. And if you're faster than other websites, it's very enjoyable to see that as well. So that's one way of looking at it. No question. How about a question? Yes, in the back. Can someone relay the question? Did no one hear it? Someone up here?
Differences between platforms and CPU speed on your platform.
So the question is, what's the difference between different platforms and CPUs? Is that right?
Yeah.
Essentially, yes. I mean, how do you account for the differences in CPU speed or memory or whatever else, different plugins and things like that when you're doing real tests?
Well, when I do these tests?
No, what the other ones?
Oh, ROM, it really doesn't matter because that's what your users have. And so if they have a lot of plugins and that's affecting your site, then that's how fast your site is to them. And most users aren't thinking, wow, Amazon's really slow. I bet it's my plugins. They're like loading Amazon and it's really slow, and they're thinking Amazon is really slow. So as far as I know, technically there's no way to check which plugins are running, and plugins actually do have a significant effect on performance, but it's also I won't say small, but far less than 50% of your users.
I meant more if you're a developer and everything runs fine on your machine, but users are complaining, how do you actually identify is it your problem or is it theirs?
Yeah, so you can do that. So then the question is, what if you're a developer and it runs fine, on your high-powered laptop, on your great internet connection? How do you find out what's going wrong with them? So if we say kind of them in aggregate, like we're looking at RUM data, and the RUM data is a lot slower. Typically, RUM data will be twice as slow as your synthetic data as far as timing goes, because there are all these things that are happening out in the wild. So one thing you can do in web page tests that I skipped over is you can choose different type of network models. The networking is all done through using DummyNet. And so you could actually, when we choose an iPhone, it models a 3G connection by default. We just recently went from a modeled DSL connection to cable because we looked at stats and it looks like cable is closer to the typical connection speed worldwide. But you could choose slower connection speeds. So that would be a way that you could estimate that. Thanks.